But I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to get someone from the technical team just help me to get my presentation up. Just give me a moment, sorry. Yeah. Presentation's open, so it's in PowerPoint. So it's there. Yeah, that's what I've just done. Yeah, it's not actually coming up. Is it? Oh, it is now. Hi everyone, sorry about that. Technical difficulties there. Let's get started. Please put your hand up either electronically or physically as we go through this, but I'll start the presentation, but I will stop and take questions at times so that we can all follow it together. So my name is Sheila Thompson and I'm the Regional Director for the East of Scotland for Community Renewal, and that includes management of the Lifting Neighbourhoods Out of Poverty project within the Edinburgh area. Today we're going to look at the community engagement mainly through our listening survey and trying to give you an understanding of why we use listening surveys and the process that we go about to use those. So what is a listening survey for? It's an opportunity for us to open up conversation with people in the community. It allows people to reflect on what's important to them and what would enhance the quality of their life and what takes away from things within their neighbourhood. Allows us to understand the social issues that prevent people from realising their potential within communities. So people like John was speaking about earlier, when we're out doing listening conversations, we can have a conversation with them to find out the things that are holding them back at that time. And it allows us to begin a thought process about how they would like to see things change in their community and for their community. So what's going on in the community and what would they like to see change? So what I'd like to do is start off by telling you a case study of a listening conversation that we had in the Bingham area, probably about 9 months ago now. So 2 members of staff, in fact, one of our staff, it was her first time after her training to go out and do listening surveys, knocked on Julie's door. And when they knocked on Julie's door, they met a woman who had been held inside for the last couple of years with COVID, but who'd been the community activist cell person before. She was very interested in making sure that the people round about her were helped, and she already knew some of the needs of other people round about her. So she wasn't really wanting to tell us things about herself. She was more interested in telling us about things that she thought other people in her street and those round about her would need. That included Anne. Anne's husband had passed away during COVID, and Anne was really struggling to connect with people again. She was struggling with her grief and the new way of living. Now, I have to tell you, at the same time as our member of staff had knocked on Julie's door, 2 other members of staff were going down the other side of the street, and they came to Anne's door. And Anne was not interested in speaking to them at all. She made it quite plain she really didn't want to speak to them, and she told them in no circumstance, without any thought, it was time for them to leave her door. And I'll let you imagine some of the language that she might have used at that time. But we carried on speaking to Julie, and Julie knew that both herself and Anne were interested in knitting. And she thought that there might be other people in the community who were struggling with low-level mental health and a bit of anxiety, especially coming out of COVID, and that maybe knitting was something that could bring them together and that they could do together. So we asked Julie if she would be interested in talking to some of the people that she thought might be interested, and that if we could come back and speak to her to see if there was more interest in the community around this. And if we could then consider meeting with a few people, either at Julie's home or at our office, which wasn't too far away. So when we got back in touch with Julie, she'd had a conversation with Anne. Anne was now feeling like she probably hadn't been too polite to us, and was a little bit concerned about coming to speak to us after the way she had told us to leave her doorstep. But Julie had said, oh, never mind that. If I'm going to go along and we're going to speak about something like this, will you come too? So the two of them came along to the office with another woman from the community that they also knew had an interest in this, called Jane, and we met with the three of them. And from there, we worked with them to creating a small knitting group. It was decided that this knitting group would be for people that they or we knew that were struggling at this time. And they didn't need to be already people who could knit, but they could be people that might be interested in learning knitting or other similar crafts like crocheting that could come together in a small, secure space where they would feel safe. So this is different from some of the groups that we might open up, which might be open to just anyone living in the community. So over a period of weeks, we started to organise this group along with the three members of the community. They were active in deciding what sort of projects they would want to do and who the group would be open to. As one of our staff members were already working with some people that were interested in knitting, we'd already mentioned it to her in other listening conversations, then we were able to invite a group of people together and create our knitting group. The knitting group has gone from strength to strength. It's gone from being not just a knitting group, but a peer support group. It's now, and it happens to be all women, though it is open to all genders, that are meeting together weekly, who are working on both joint projects and individual craft projects, but where they can talk to one another about the anxieties they've been feeling that week, how they maybe can each suggest things that will support each other, and how they can support each other when the group's not on by sharing each other's contact details and being able to support one another. So we've gone from knocking on one door or two doors, but being turned away from one, to having an initial group of 3, to now a group of 9 to 10 people that come together on a weekly basis and who have now knitted this picture to the side of the screen here, putting their squares together. And this blanket is now in part of a comfort blanket that's on display for mental health projects that have been helping people in the community. So they've gone from being not sure about leaving their own front doors to coming together in our community room within our own office, to producing a garment that's now on display for other people across Edinburgh to be able to see. This is a big piece of work that's gone on from knocking at one door, and it's just one example of what happens when we knock on someone's door. So what do we ask when we're doing the listening survey? We ask people about what they like, about living in their area. This identifies strengths and it helps to build on these ideas as we build up a picture of the community. Asks about concerns that they might see in their community, whether that's around fly tipping or youth issues or damaged pavements or lack of a service that they want, all sorts of different things that they might see in their community that raises concerns from them. And one of the reasons we do this is to see if they're interested in what's going on across the whole community, or if it's just things that is very pertinent to them as an individual. but asks about the vision and the ideas and identifies people that can think creatively and positively about change, just like Julie did in thinking about the knitting group. It asks about meeting others. It's a gentle challenge to action, and an opportunity is offered to see if they can find other people that might be interested in helping. And we've seen things like this around litter picking, people saying that's an issue that they're concerned about, but saying they would be happy to get involved in that. Asks about organising and identifying those who are shy and those who feel strongly, and those who have confidence to get on and help others. Asks about contacts and identifying potential leaders. People often don't see themselves as the leader, so sometimes we'll knock on someone's door and it won't be the leader, Julie, that we're speaking to, but it'll be someone in the community that will say, oh, well, if you knock on so-and-so's door down the road, they always get involved in things. They'll help with things in the community. So sometimes people put forward their neighbours without even having a second thought as to what that issue or what the potential item might be that they work on, but they know a leader within the community. And that can be a great help in helping us to identify people. Asks about what they would like for themselves. This gets them thinking about their personal goals and what they might want to achieve. And often when people have goals that they want to work on themselves or issues that they start to speak on, and we're not looking at this initial listening survey for people to tell us lots of personal detail, and we're certainly not recording personal detail at this point. But if they do speak about goals or things that they would like to see changed in their own personal life, we can then arrange a one-to-one appointment with them, where we can get into that discussion and help them through our holistic assessment process to look at goals they might want to achieve for themselves and how they can be the person that's active in creating these goals and working towards them with support, but not being where we put them into the fix-it model that John spoke about earlier today. Asking about contacting them again is really important. It checks to see that they're really interested in the things that they've spoken about and that we have a way of going back and getting in touch with them. From a data protection point of view, we call this our first level connection with them. So at this point, we're only collecting their names and the subject matters that they might be interested in to go back rather than personal detail. And after listening to them, we give them some information about the fact that we've taken this very basic information regarding them and that we'll only hold it for up to 6 months unless they've had some other level of contact with us. And this allows us to reconnect with them, maybe sharing newsletters with them, sharing information about groups that might be coming together and subject matters they're interested in, or allowing someone to get back in touch with them to offer them a one-to-one, where obviously we then deal with the data protection on that issues and the data sharing. So what outcomes do we get from this listening surveys? We get knowledge of what the community member wants, sees, needs and wants in their community. It brings people with similar wants and needs together, and it provides information to support funding applications. So often community groups have an idea of what an organisation or a community wants, but by having undertaken listening surveys, we're able to back that up by saying we've spoken to X number of people within the community and that they're interested in taking this idea further. And for that reason, we're now applying for funding to carry out and bring these community members in as part of the project development. It allows us to connect with people who require one-to-one support. So like the person that John told us about in the initial session, who wouldn't have come to a public meeting, who wouldn't have come to a community event, but who, when we knocked on their door, very quickly told us there were things that they were wanting support with, but didn't know where to get that help from. And without going into too much on the doorstep, we were able to offer that one-to-one support. And you heard some of the outcomes that came for them around their damp issues, about access through social work and getting connection built with children that were no longer in the home and working towards getting them back. It shows gaps in community facilities and services. People will speak about things that they see an issue in the community and how they might see it, maybe not even for themselves, but how they think that's an issue that might be missing for other people, such as youth groups within the community. It builds connections with other organisations in the community, because we use our listening survey to speak to people in the community that are already there and with groups that are already working. And that helps to build on the picture of the individual doors that we knock on. What we're really looking for with any successful listening survey is a reason to go back, a reason to reconnect with the person so that we're able to talk with them further and work with them on things that they want to see change within their community. I'm going to stop sharing just now so that I can see yourselves on the screen. If you want to put your cameras on, then we can start to have a conversation within here. And here's some of the things that you might find or want more information around listening survey. I've tried to give just an overlay there and give one example of a listening survey and the way that went. And John gave earlier the one-to-one listening survey and how it led to the one-to-one work. So I'd be interested to hear from you what sort of areas or neighbourhoods or occasions that you might be interested in using listening surveys, and how we can help share that view with you. Have any of you tried doing this before? No? Okay. Has any of what I've been saying?
So yeah, I've done
Marie, hi.
We've just finished in our locality plan and we used various methods. Some of it was around the doors. Another one, things for more kind of inclusive sessions as well. So we use a variety of methods.
And how did you find going around the doors?
It was okay. It was okay, but I think it's when you're doing it and who you're doing it, because a lot of times going around doors, people are not coming to your door. Because especially if maybe in some areas somebody coming to the door with a landlord or workers come to the door, they feel quite intimidated or funny about that. So I think we need to be aware of that as well. We go to people's doors. But a lot of times we went answering, I found it better to actually hold events or go to groups and speak to people. I didn't really find the door to door, and I've done it numerous times over the years. Sometimes it's a wee bit better, but I think we need to be aware of our geographical areas and where we're doing it, how it's perceived, if that makes sense.
So when we've done door knocking, we go out in twos. We never allow two meals to go together. That takes away some of that stigma of knocking on the door. We carry our lanyards with us, but we don't wear them, which again just takes that bit of the official person coming to the door away, so that it looks a more friendly visit to the door. It is about knocking on the door and the stepping back to give the person coming to the door the personal space that they might need. It's also about, because we are based in the communities that we work, being seen, like you say, at events and other things, and be seen walking the streets, so that people gradually get to know some of us, so that we're not seen as strangers knocking on the doors. They may have seen us out and about. I always say that we're successful in any community that we're working on. You know, I work across multiple communities with our different staff teams, but I always feel that if it gets to the point that I'm known in the community, then the rest of the team must be known in the community.
Well, what I found just was getting the community to come and be involved in stuff, and I found that easier, because people sometimes will speak to local community activists and stuff as well, whether you're outside local post office doing street work or things like that as well. So even just going to them to the door, a lot of people won't answer the door, even if you don't have the landlord or you don't look, it's that kind of thing. People are feeling funny about answering the door. So I think sometimes being out with the local community or people like that, even when I'm a community worker and I worked there for so many years, not everybody knows you. And I do think getting the community involved in these processes makes a lot of big difference.
I mean, we do use volunteers. We also employ local people. We've recently had people in Edinburgh on through the No One Left Behind placements for 6 months, and often they've come from the communities that we're working in. So again, they're known. But we've actually not found, yes, you'll get people that are not in, and sometimes people don't come to the doors, but we do find that we get quite a lot of people coming to the doors. That's not been such an issue that we've had. We take three streets at a time to systematically work through those. We also try going at different times. So if we've gone down the street on a Tuesday morning one week, we would tend to go back, say, on a Wednesday afternoon the next time, because you'll have different people in at different times as well. So that you can try and get that balance of who you're getting. And again, people work at different times. So we have occasionally taken in the summer an evening or a Saturday morning where we can go out door knocking, where you're getting different people again. And it is always easier in the bright lights of summer where people are more willing to speak to you. Caroline.
Hi there, I'm from Scottish Borders. We've run a project, we're still running a project called Low and Slow, which is about using slow cookers to try and reduce the cost of food preparation. But also within that, we have different members from the community coming in to talk to the folks that are taking part in the group. So generally, but we're only targeting 5 or 6 people at a time. So we're not really engaging completely with the community, but we've got a sort of finger, because I've just started this post about a year ago. So it's just that case of being in the school and folks seeing you and saying hi to them at the playground type of thing, but relying on other partners to make referrals into the Low and Slow.
I mean, sorry, as well as using the listening survey on doors, you can use the same questions when you're meeting people. So it's not always about taking the street by street. It's about the use of the questions and how we use them to get people to give us the information that we want. Colin, do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, I don't know if you mentioned it at the beginning, but did you or would you sort of pre-leaflet an area to say that you're going to come, or just to warn people that you're coming around to do a survey, or is it just you turn up on spec?
No, we're constantly doing this in the neighbourhood that we work in, so we don't, it's not that we're going out to do this en masse at any one time. We're permanently doing it, so we don't tend to do that. We don't put leaflets around the doors, you know, saying we'll be round in the next few weeks or something like that. No, we just knock on the doors. And the more we're in a community, the more people know that that's what we do as well. So word of mouth gets out that we're doing that. But the actual listening survey, you know, we don't go with a piece of paper. It's not a tick box survey. We don't write anything down as such when we're at the door. What we're trying to find is a reason to go back, or a reason to invite that person to have that bigger conversation with us at another time. So it's that initial things about what, how long have you lived here? What's the best thing about living in this community? And we always start with the positive questions, because people are always ready to tell you the negative things. But if you're also trying to find out about a neighbourhood that you've not worked in before, then finding out those positive things will help you to give feedback when you're working in a neighbourhood, so that you can say to people, and you know, once you've heard it from 2 or 3 people, you can say where your other people on the street or roundabout have said that you've got X, Y, or Z. If someone says something's missing from the community, you'll have already heard it from others that it might be there. You know, we're trying to find out if there's something they don't like about living there, but try and do that in a positive way, So it's about what their concerns are, so that we can try and improve that. With the Lifting Neighbourhood Together project and lifting the neighbourhood out of poverty, what we're trying to do, remember, is try and help people's lives, that as their individual lives get better, that the community life gets better as well, so that they want to stay in that community. You know, as we've heard, often when individual people's lives, you know, the map that John was showing in Dundee, as individual people's lives get better, they move out, then someone else gets moved in that has complex issues. That's why we often hear said from people that live in more affluent communities, oh, that community gets all that money, but nothing ever changes. It's individuals' lives have changed. So we're trying, if everyone's working together and we try and improve the community at the same time as individuals' lives, then people will want to stay in that community and help to bring it forward as their life gets better. And you wanted to, Anne-Marie, you wanted to come back in?
I was just to say, what do you use the information for eventually to maybe influence? Because I keep feeling a lot of times as workers, we're doing things to people to mitigate what's happening just now, but not actually looking at people's voices to influence change and to talk, because we're thinking, right, there's all these warm spaces and pantries. Yeah, it's awful, we need these things, but so where do we get people's voices to affect change as well and influence maybe things that's happening in local councils or local services as well? Have you used that or found that useful?
Yes. So a number of people in certain areas, you'll often find, say, damp housing will be in multiple houses in the same community or the same street or the same block, you know, if it's an issue there. So then we can try and take those people together and help work with them, so to help them to write constructive emails or letters to local councillors, or to meet with local councillors, or to meet with housing officers, so that they're coming together to try and make that change within a small part of that neighbourhood for them as a group of residents. In Bingham, for instance, one of the things that came out as we were coming out of COVID was the request to get the community centre reopened. And you obviously in the City Council are having to take time and work and do things in appropriate ways at that time, and they were looking at how they could do that. So we were able to step in along with the Bingham Management Community Committee and ourselves, because that committee weren't at a point at that time to be able to take the centre on themselves, but we were able to take the lease over of that building, which has then started to get that open up for the community. So that came from listening surveys of people saying we need somewhere for the children to have activities. So we're not running that centre, we're not running all the groups that are in there, we're not trying to be the fix-it, but we're trying to work with a community group there that are starting to do those things for the rest of their community. And they were there before as well. So that's something that very constructive that we've been doing there in Bingham, from listening to what people wanted to say on multiple doorsteps. Marion.
Thanks, Sheila. That's really interesting. I had one reflection and one question, but you've actually just answered my question. So it's two reflections. I think the first thing was about what you've demonstrated is about the importance of being present and about being known and about being trusted, and that whole I thought it was really interesting, the example about the two women in the one street being you know, being approached, and the one engaged, the other one across the road told you to get lost, but then when she heard that her friend had engaged, then she, you know, she had the trusted relationship with a friend that kind of got you the buy-in there, I suppose. And I just thought that was interesting, and I think comparing that to contact we've had recently with the National Register of Scotland about the census, and they had approached different TSIs across the country saying, you know, how can we reach the hardest to reach communities? But they'd identified postcode areas where census returns have been really low. And one of the things that they had done was gone and knocked on people's doors in the postcode areas with low returns, and surprise, surprise, didn't get a good reception because they weren't known, they weren't trusted, they weren't respected, they were viewed with suspicion and so on. And I think what you've described demonstrates the other side to that. The question I was going to ask, but which you've answered, was to keep people engaged, they need us. I would say they need to see that being asked and giving their opinion makes a difference. So I was going to say what has happened as a result of doing the community asking, and you've given the example of the community centre, which I think is fantastic. And I think that that's a way then to build credibility and to get engagement and trust and respect. So
that's not easy.
Excellent. No,
it's not easy
at all.
because, you know, we're sort of caught between the council and the community group now when they run out of toilet rolls and things like that, because we've
Yes.
released older. So there's extra work and things comes with that.
Yeah.
But we also
can-
have a men's group that's now used within, so some things happen in our building and some things happen in the community centre. They are right next door to each other. So they're co-located, though they're separate entrances. Which is fortunate for us. But we're also doing things in other buildings. So some of the things that came out through listening surveys, so we've held listening, so at our pantry, which is in the Hayes, one of the other 3 parts to this neighbourhood, is where our pantry is. So we've held listening surveys with people in the queue while they're in the pantry, having the same conversation as we would on the door. So like what Anne-Marie was saying and others have said, when you've got events and things going on. And what came out of there was the request for a job club. So we've now got a job club running parallel to the pantry on the same day in the same building. And what we've been able to do is take one of our employability specialists up to be there, who can then register them on the Edinburgh-wide Next Steps employment project that then get them one-to-one support for employment. So they'll come together as a group there, but they can then get one-to-one support. And when we say one-to-one support for anyone that's in the Lifting Neighbourhood Together area, when we start with someone, we always do the holistic assessment that you'll see in the next session when you'll see my name change, because I'll become the client. Sorry, my camera jumped off. I'll become the client there. But when we do that for anyone that we have a one-to-one relationship with, so we don't assume that what they're telling us is their personal issue is the only issue they've got, or if it's the actual, sometimes it's the surface issue and there's other things going on behind the scenes. And sometimes you can help someone into work if there's a bigger issue going on to the side of that.
So can I ask, how does that work then in terms of the listening survey identifies gaps and needs? And if it's to do with an individual, then in terms of having the employability service that you can, you know, expand or engage the person with, if it's a very clear community need, which was the example of the community centre, you then find yourself almost like becoming a facilities manager in terms of, I'm just thinking about, is there that expectation that if you've identified the need, then you have to fill it?
We don't always. On that one,
yeah,
we're almost like a co-facilitator with another community organisation there. And that's a specific one, that's not a norm. We've become the facilitator to the knitting group, as in we facilitate the space, but actually the knitting group runs itself now. So what happens at the knitting group, though, is one of our mental health advisors, so everyone, they're all community caseworkers, but one that specialises more in mental health will sometimes go in and sit in that group as they peer-to-peer support each other to see if anyone's needing an individual appointment, either with whoever their advisor is, but she'll go into that group, which would be part of what we do. We've listened to other people who want the equivalent of a people shed. And again, we've now managed to find a space to be able to do that. We've put in an application to Edinburgh Tools Library, where they take on a community project to come and do a project in a 3-month period. So we're getting volunteers from there to come and help, if you like, build the set for the people shed and be able to do that. And then we'll support them with one of our staff working with the community members that want to do that, to set up their terms of reference and to create a group. We don't always create everything into organisations, because not everything needs to be an organisation, but into groups that then can run that community space. So watch out for that one. That's one that's coming up, but that's
Yeah.
come again from listening to people, both at the community centre for that one and on the doors.
So I suppose there's elements of that sound, like in some ways what community link workers do with individuals. It's almost like what you're doing with a group of individuals or with a community. But, and when sometimes the weakness for community link working is that what the link worker would like to link the person to either doesn't exist or has got a very big waiting list. So you've got some leverage to be able to help make it happen, which is great. Really
So
good.
what you'll find, because we do employ community link workers in Edinburgh in a different part of the city. So we have 3 community link workers and 2 in one community and 1 in 2 different communities. But what we have is within the Lifting Neighbourhoods Together is a strong relationship with the community link workers within the doctor's surgeries. So as well as our listening surveys as a way of finding people, because we are known to the GP practices, we'll have people referred to us for one-to-one support that goes beyond the 6 appointments that the community link workers in Edinburgh can do. And community link workers work in different ways in different communities. So we've employed link workers before in the Murray area of Scotland, where they were able to work with people for 12 to 18 months. And we do have, that's how long we would say when we go into working with an individual, is that we look at what their life's like and what it could be like in 12 to 18 months. So the listening survey helps us find individuals that may not have gone to their GP and been referred to the link worker because they don't see it as medical. So they haven't gone to the link worker through the link worker service, but they can still get that one-to-one support through ourselves. But remember, when they come to us as a one-to-one support, we will do like the link workers and refer them out to other people. So the listening survey is a way of finding those individuals that are hidden, that don't even go, it might not even discuss their concerns with their GP because they don't see it as medical, or don't think they'll get a face-to-face appointment with someone at the moment. So we find those people that are hidden in the community. And it is that going out, and it is the way that you go out and speak with people to find them, that helps to open those barriers and take down some of those barriers. When Paul spoke, sorry, there was a small group when we did the chats early on. My colleague Paul was speaking about how we used to work with lots of GP practices. We community renewal, because we've used the same listening survey, the actual questions in lots of different locations in different ways. And we used it in a medical process at one time with a couple of additional questions, and that was for people that weren't going for their bowel screening. So a bit like not putting back the responses to other questionnaires and things, people that were seen to be hard to reach, but when you actually went to the door, you could actually speak to them about things. So it is about how we go out. We also wouldn't be seen wearing what I would call traditional, or was before COVID, office wear. You know, so we're much more casual in what we wear and how we go out and about to people. Often people want to tell you about the community and what's wrong with it, but they don't want to be any more involved. But we'll say to them then, okay, so you don't want to be involved at the moment, but if we think something's going to change around that topic, would you like to hear about it? So that's your buy-in back to that person. That's why we keep a note of their contact details for 6 months. So they might have complained about the play park in Bingham, which people were doing a while back. And then we did get a group, actually one community organisation and some people via the listening surveys came together and said, well, we would be willing to paint it. And we were able to go to be that connection between Edinburgh City Council to get permission to do it. At the council, because obviously it was a few years off from the council's official list of when it would be due to be repainted. And we were able to access a small fund to buy the paint. And then the community came out and painted it. I have to say, our members of staff also went out and bought the DW40 because one of the swings squeaked like mad and could be heard inside our office. So if it squeaks, we go out and deal with that. That's from listening to our staff on that occasion about what annoys them and what's awkward for when one-to-one clients are there in the background. So the listening survey, that the fact that someone has moaned about the part but doesn't want to be involved about it, we were able to go back to those people and say, some of your neighbours and there's one of the community gardening projects are going to take on doing that. We just thought we'd let you know. Would it be all right if we hold on to your details longer about the other things that you were interested in and we keep the level, and that gives you another 6 months that you can do that. We also take the information and it's how we then record it. So there was, John showed an example of one page that just showed houses. So we have a digital copy and we have a paper copy of what's happened. And it was, how do we keep that secure? But have an easy way of looking at that quite quickly, especially when lots of people come in and out of our building. So we literally have a folder that has lots of Polly Pockets in it. And if you look at those Polly Pockets, you'll see dots on them that mean absolutely nothing. But when we put in that 3-street map into it, that lets us see quickly which houses have got a housing issue, which houses people have said that they're struggling with low level mental health or more serious mental health, which people were interested in community groups being set up. And we've got all different pages so that we can just slide the map in and quickly see where those houses are, as well as the database. But we wouldn't share that with you today because that would show people's individual data, which is why we've created LNTville, so Lifting Neighbourhoods Together Village, so that we have an example. If we were speaking and showing you in a one-to-one, we can actually show you how that process works, but without it being the real streets. And that was also to show the funders the lottery of how it works. But that's given us great data and information. Again, if you're going to funders or things, you can pull that data. So when it comes back, we'll put it into the database saying that's the person's name, how long we can hold on to their information for, and what issues they were interested in finding more out about, or what issues were personal issues were topics that they have raised. So if they have a disabled child, they might raise that, but we don't ask for any details or anything on the doorstep. And I think that's something else that, as the word's got round about, is doing it, is that people know we're not going to be over personal. If they want to tell us more than that, then we arrange to see them again. Also, so that you can move on from door to door. If any of you have heard people that go out and do political door knocking, they'll always say, you know, you shouldn't get into a long conversation. And sometimes people will deliberately try and get them into a long conversation because they vote differently, and it's to stop them going to the next door. So you're just trying to collect basic information when we're doing this listening surveys so that we can reconnect with these people. But it is about the way that we speak to them, you know, and we do a whole training course. So we're giving you the information here. What I'm not doing today is the training course on how we go approach people, how we say that. But if anyone's interested in those training courses, then obviously we would be happy to discuss that with you. But it's always, again, the last question, can we contact you again? And if it's they don't want direct contact, can we just feed back information on areas that you've said that are of interest to you? So you have 2 bites of the cherry. If they say they don't want that direct contact, then can we just put something through your door or send you an email that lets you know what's going on in the community? And that's enough to be able to connect with people again. But most people, if they're given any information, will say that you can go back. Or they'll say that they would like an appointment. Now, sometimes we're able to arrange that appointment on the door. Other times we'll say that one of the admin team or one of the other advisors will give you a call back and will arrange to see you. And with sometimes what they'll say as well, because they've made that connection on the door, is I'll be there when you come, even if your appointment's not with me. so that that first connection is carried forward to, even if it's to someone else. And then if we are working with somebody on a one-to-one basis, we always speak to that person we have a caseworker that will stick with them. So they might get an internal referral within our organisation to someone else for specific appointments, or externally to citizens' advice, to the housing officer, or whoever it might be. But when we get to that one-to-one, we're really looking at the person tells, we keep hearing about tell your story once. That's really difficult because there's always someone else that needs part of that. So we try to be that trusted organisation where they tell their story once, and if we refer them on to someone else, they only have to take a chapter with them. And like citizens' advice would know that they don't need to delve in for other things, because they would know the person's told the whole story to us, and they've got other things that there'll be other people helping them with. So tell the story once, tell the chapter that's necessary, and then we can give the person the skills to tell just that chapter. That all comes from that first listening survey. Sometimes people say, well, if you keep knocking on doors and getting people that want one-to-one support, how do you cope with that and the quantity of work that you're getting? And that is a balance, but it's a balance about being that person's main support, but not trying to do everything for them, and trying to get them to connect with other organisations that you either give them information about or you connect them directly to. So that people may stay on your caseload for a long time, but you're not seeing them every week. They've got projects to go off and do, and then you can check in with them how far towards their goals they're going. But that comes from doing the listening survey first, to hear that they've got that individual needs, to offer them that one-to-one, or to hear what their community needs are. And some people will have both. We had someone that came looking for us, so we didn't go looking for him. And he's the manager of the local amateur football team. And he wanted to know what we could do to help them with funds for the football team, and what we, who could help them. So as part of that initial conversation with him, we held a listening survey with him. So he came with a list of questions for us, but we asked him to find out more about him and to see how he fitted in with that community. And from that listening survey with him, we have gone on to help that football group find some funding and ways of applying for funds. But he's then spoken to other people who've then gone and asked, either come and ask directly for one-to-one support, or he's let them know so that when we're out in the streets, he's talking about us. So having that community champions talking about people going out to doing the listening surveys really works well. So when you're doing the listening surveys at the beginning, it's not just about doing it on the doorway, it's also about doing that listening surveys with people that are already active in the community. So in Magdalen, which is the third of those parts of our community, when we went out and talked to some community activists there, including the church leader at Magdalen Church, then from there, he offered us the opportunity to go in and do listening surveys with people that were already using their services. So it is that two-way, you know, what you were saying, Anne-Marie, about doing it, but we always do it on a one-to-one basis. We don't do it in a group session. So we'll go and speak to people that are at events, but we don't have an event to have the listening survey, because that takes away from that individual person's ability to
That's
speak.
maybe why it's different for me, because I'm a community development worker, so it's no the individual stuff, it's usually for a collective reason. So if it's looking at what's needed in a community to kind of maybe look at change, or to get together to look at the bigger things, that's maybe where it's more different for what you do, because it seems more individual, but also comes to some group stuff. So we've done usually listening surveys is to let people know what's happening, for them to get involved and gathering personal information from it or things like that. So it's probably different, and we use just a variety of methods, and it's just to create a dialogue for people to come speak to us, because obviously people got quieter voices and it's for us to go to them. as well, and to find out what is it they, because if people are living under all this really stressful situations now, everything that's happening, how do we actually there to help also to link in with them? So that I found also working with a lot of workers in the coalface, like the family workers, people like that, who would get access to families that we would never get to speak to, because they're not going to come up and speak to me as a community worker, even know my face, because unless you get to know you and build the relationships as well. So I found that really useful as well, having the frontline workers, relationships with them, and doing work with them to try and speak to people as well. But definitely being with the community members that people trust and can know, they'll come speak to you as well. But it's but as you're saying, it's always about doing stuff as well. It's not like just taking information and leaving that in ether. It's coming back to people and saying, well, you've told us this, but this is what's going to happen, so they can see action, that something's happening with it, that they're not just getting this information. I think sometimes if there's surgeries and things like that happens, we're all very guilty and never telling people what's done with that as well. And so it's to come back to people to make sure they know what's happened, but also be part of that process of whatever it is the information is happening. That's why I think they're trying to do it differently with the locality plans we've just done there. It's very much going to be a live working document with the community being the heart of that process, as well as work with community plan partners. They're an active part of that as well. But it takes a long time to get trust, because people just get so scunnered, like being given surveys and asked things, then nothing happens, and that's what it's hard, isn't it? That happens a lot, I would say, survey fatigue.
Yeah, I'm just watching our time. There's only what time we're due to finish? 42. So yeah, we're just coming up to. What I would say is one difference is that you're speaking sometimes about going out to tell people what's already happening, where we're going out to hear what people want. We're not telling them what's already something that's already happening.
No, we're going out to speak to people, find out what is their local issues, and find out gaps. No, we're going out like as part of the Cali plan to find out, like, post-COVID, what is the issues post-COVID, where's the gaps, what is it needing to be done. No, we're not telling people what's happening. We're out
It was just something you said earlier. You said we go out to tell people. You use that word. That was
no, maybe if there's a consultation on, but no, we don't tell people what's happening. We go out to speak to people and find out from them what their local needs are. But if there's a consultation or something else happening, we'll maybe say, well, this event's happening, if you want to come. Sorry, it's maybe just the way I was speaking, but no, we don't go and tell folk this is what we're doing to you. It's not that, because that's that perceived needs. It's about their needs and their lived experience. It's invaluable. I don't live where I work. I don't just like to live there, so how can I? So you've got to be really careful with the perceived needs.
Yeah, no. That's exactly it. That's exactly what we're trying to do, is to hear the needs of the people.